You should have your science notebook so you can take some notes over balanced and unbalanced forces. You need to make sure you know the difference between a balanced and an unbalanced force, and then you also have to be able to calculate what the net force is. So we're going to go over all of that in this presentation. Okay, a balanced force is not going to change an object's motion. That means the upward force is going to be equal to the downward force. Remember, there's forces that you can't even see, such as gravity and friction. So this picture shows you that the upward force of the balloon, the helium in the balloon is pushing up, and that the downward force of the boy pulling down on the string plus the gravity are equal. So that balloon is not moving. That is considered a balanced force. An unbalanced force is when you have one force that is greater than the other. And so this is going to cause an object to change its motion. It can move, it can stop, it can change direction. So here the upward force of the helium balloon is greater than the downward force of the gravity. And so the balloon is going to rise and go upwards. In the second picture, your downward force is greater than the upward force, and so the balloon is going to drop. So these are examples of unbalanced forces. Balanced force is going to be equal and opposite. So there's going to be no change in velocity. So what makes us be able to stand upright is the upward force of the floor pushing on us is equal to the downward force of gravity pulling down on the person. Unbalanced forces are not equal and opposite, so here you're going to have a change in velocity. Remember, velocity is speed in a specific direction. So here, the boy in the purple has a greater force than the boy in the blue overalls, and so the downward force is greater, so that you have an unbalanced force. So this is the difference between a balanced force and an unbalanced force. We see this in tug of war. When one side has a greater force than the other, then they're declared the winner. When you are calculating forces, it is called the net force. And so forces are shown by arrows. When the forces add up to 0, then the forces are balanced. When they have a number value, so when you have the forces applied that have a number value to them, then the forces are unbalanced. So we're going to look at some of those examples. Here we go. We have 100 newtons to the right and 100 newtons to the left. These forces are opposite. So when they are opposite, you are going to subtract. So this is an example of a balanced force. There is no movement because I have equal forces on both sides of that spring scale. Here, these forces are also opposite. I have 60 newtons to the left and 60 newtons to the right. When the forces are opposite, you subtract, and I get 0 newtons. So remember, when there is no number value, 0, it is a balanced force. Here, my skateboarder. I have the force of air resistance and friction acting against his pushing of his foot equal 100 newtons to the right, 100 newtons to the left. They are opposite, so what do? You subtract. 100 minus 100 is 0 newtons, so this is a balanced force. When the forces do not add up to 0, so there is a number value to them, then it is unbalanced. So these are opposite forces. So remember, when they are opposite, you subtract. I have 320 newtons to the left, 300 newtons to the right. Subtract the 2. and you have a value of 20 newtons, it would be moving to the left. I have 20 newtons of force to the left. You can use calculators, remember that. Here, these forces are opposite, so with the opposite you subtract. I have 60 newtons to the left. I have 20 newtons to the right. They are opposite, so 60 minus 20 is 40. This object is moving. It is unbalanced. It is moving 40 newtons of force to the left. Here's my skateboarder again. Now he's got a greater force of his foot pushing against the ground, so 120 newtons to the right. The air resistance and friction against his push is 100 newtons to the left. Those are opposite, so you subtract the two. 120 minus 100 gives you a net force of 20 newtons, and he would be moving to the right. It is an unbalanced force. Here we have forces that are acting in the same direction, so they're working together. So when you have forces that are acting in the same direction, you add them. So I have 15 newtons to the right and a 5 newtons to the right. You add them up. 15 plus 5 is 20 newtons. This blue box would be moving 20 newtons to the right. This is considered unbalanced. Here they are working together. They're moving in the same direction. I have two arrows that show me I have 10 newtons of force to the right. The other arrow is also 10 newtons of force to the right. You add them. This box is unbalanced. It is moving 20 newtons to the right. So here's the review of everything that you should have learned. If you do not have all of this written down, you need to make sure everything on this slide is written down. Balanced forces are going to have no movement because all forces are equal on all sides. The net force on a balanced force is going to be 0 newtons. Unbalanced force means that that object is going to have some sort of movement because the forces are not equal. You're going to have a net force of some number value. If the forces are moving in opposite directions, you subtract. If they are moving in the same direction, you add. You can review this and add any examples to your notes that you would like. If you have any questions, be sure to ask me.